I'd like to call the departmental meeting to order, please. If you would stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And I would also ask you, recently, former village trustee Harry Murray passed away last week. So Harry, longtime Heights family, and did an awful lot for Peoria Heights. So if you remember Harry and his family in your moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome everyone. Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll.
Trustee Carter? Present. Trustee Mariscal?
Present.
Trustee Kazam?
Present.
Trustee Gett?
Present.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Present.
Trustee DeVore?
Present.
All right, got everyone here. That's fantastic. We would be at approval of the minutes from the special meeting on August 1st, 2020, and a departmental meeting on Tuesday, September 1st, 2020. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Any questions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, we'd be at comments from the audience. If anyone in the audience would like to address the board, please come forward to the podium and give your name and address, and please try and keep it under 5 minutes. Okay, going once, going twice. Comments from the audience are closed. We have a presentation tonight by Scott Sorrell. I don't see Scott here yet, and actually that's partly my fault because I think I told him I would have this on the agenda at the end of the meeting, but he'll be here and we'll come back to this. So is there any old business come before the board? Let's get right into new business then. The first is under Public Works with Trustee Carter. We have a discussion item, an estimate for inspection of water well number 12, not to exceed $10,772. Trustee Carter, I think we're sending this to the full board, so could I get a motion to approve this?
I make a motion to approve well water number 12 for an inspection.
Thank you.
A second.
Okay, go ahead, Trustee Carter.
Okay, so Dave's coming up to the podium so he can explain a little more, but it's well 12 that we're not using, and this is just an inspection on the reasoning and why it's the dirty water, but he'll explain.
Yep, this is regarding well number 12, which is at the end of Cord Court, below the hill. Cord Court, if you're not familiar with that, it's across the street from Fire Station number 2. It's at the dead end, well 12 is. Well 12 was built and designed in 2010, which was 10 years ago. We have been unable to use it since its design and build due to pumping dirty water and sludge. 10 years has passed. The reasons we haven't really looked into it would be fear of the unknown, budget concerns. So this budget year, we budgeted $100,000 for well rehab, and I thought it was important to get this well looked at first. The estimate that was attached in the packet is not to exceed $10,772, and what that estimate is for is to pull the pump out of the roof, and then they will do a downhole survey, which basically is they'll stick a camera down it, and then they will give us a recommendation on what type of work needs to be done to make this well operational and in quality of standard quality. This estimate this estimate does not include any type of work that they find wrong with it. Like I mentioned, we only have $100,000 budgeted this year for well rehab, so this $10,700 will come out of that budget. If they come back to us and say this well is junk, we need to build a whole new well for $155,000, we're obviously not going to be doing that this year. If they come back to us and say it's going to cost $25,000, we'll probably go ahead and do that work. But we don't know we have some ideas on what is wrong with it, but they don't know for sure. So we won't know actually what's wrong with it until they investigate it, and that's what this estimate's for. Any questions? Yes.
So this has been inoperable for over 10 years, is that right? Out of our
Yeah.
5 wells, this is,
Yeah, it's a brand-new building. It looks brand new. I would say over the 10 years, I know the 7 years I've been doing this job, or 6 years, I've probably tried to run it 2 or 3 times. And as soon as you run it, you start getting dirty water complaints. So for the past 5 years, it has not ran. It's sat, basically, just sat idle.
okay. And I'm all for doing this, I just want to state that. But how long, like if we were to get a price on this, how long would these numbers be valid? Do you think like up to a year or
Oh, for the
cost associated too?
I think they guarantee I think it's 30 days what they guarantee. Yeah, the proposals for them are valid for 30 days. So that's what they guarantee that work. Every day, the price,
Changes?
yeah, goes up. So the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. I'm hoping that it's not going to be expensive, but yeah, I don't know until I.
Have you worked with this firm before?
Yes, this is this is not the company that put it in.
Okay.
This is the company that we've worked with. They've done 2 rehabs for us, and I trust them, and they're fantastic.
Okay, I just asked that because you said not to exceed $10,772, but it does say that hours unused or in excess will be credited or increased.
Yeah, he told me he estimated it high. He wasn't expecting it to be that high, but he wanted to give us some buffer room, so he's expecting it to be down lower than that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Do we need this well?
We need every well. Yeah.
So how have we been able to go 10 years without it?
Well, we have 5.
Uh-huh.
In my opinion, too many wells is not enough. Our other wells range from 30 to 40 years old. So it'd be nice to be able to have one that's 10 years old that never has been used.
We've never used this one?
No.
Ever?
Like I said, we've turned it on maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 6, 7 years. We just can't use it. So, I mean,
Is there no liability to the people that installed
No,
it then?
I was telling Cheryl, I reached out to the company that put it in about 2 or 3 years ago and asked for like some type of warranty or something. And they basically said, go. So that's kind of the reason why I have not, they have not gotten our work since I've been doing this job. I don't even call them. They call me and I don't call them back because to me, that's bad business. But yeah. I will say it's believed that there may be some issues with the development. That's why it doesn't work, is because it was underdeveloped.
What do you mean by underdeveloped?
I'm being told that the company that put it in had some workers back in that time frame that did Chevy work, and they think they just did not complete it properly. But they won't know that until they actually get down there. But they've run into this at several other locations where this company did work that was shabby during that time frame.
Okay, so if this company goes through and confirms that, let's say it is shady work, then can we step in?
I mean,
Mark, and
yeah.
maybe sue them or at least make them pay to have it redone?
They have
Somebody?
an obligation to perform in what the law describes as a workmanlike manner, so, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And they would be able to tell us maybe?
Yes, yeah, that's what he suspects, but he won't know 100% until he gets down there.
Okay, so, okay.
There's no statute of limitations on that, Mark? I mean, we can go back?
You know, for a contract, it's 10 years, you can only go back, but, yeah, I'd have to look at it closely, see when the work was completed and so forth.
Yeah, 10 years is an estimate. I don't know the exact, I know it was 2010, but I don't know the exact. And I know we're on 10 years right here, so I don't,
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, Dave, well explained. So we're voting to send this to the board for final action. Madam Clerk, whenever you're ready.
Trustee Carter?
Aye.
Trustee Marisko?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
That passes. Next is a discussion item, the Samuel Avenue roadway and parking design recommendation. I think we'll wait on a motion on this. Cheryl, do you want to wait until we do the presentation? Is that,
Yeah, we can
Council,
do
is that what you want to do? because we don't know what the recommendation is quite yet, so.
No, and I'm not sure that we have a formal recommendation at this point. We just wanted to,
Do you want to start this off then?
yeah, I think so. And by the way, I've just communicated back and forth with Katie Kim. She didn't understand it was up tonight. That's probably my fault. I thought she did. So she was going to try to come here, but, it's not up for final action anyway. This is just something, and I have emailed the trustees, so you should have received something from me. We're at a point where we need to make some decisions about what we want to see with Samuel as part of this development. It is a TIF project, so it's going to be TIF tax dollars that will be used to pay for the infrastructure, part of which is the street. And most of the infrastructure items are things that we're not going to care much about. The engineer cares a lot about, like the water mains and all the subsurface stuff. What we need from you is sort of your input on the layout and design of the street itself. The rest of it will kind of fall in place once we come up with a design for the layout of the street. So that's the important part. And where we're at is it's, always, trying to juggle parking versus, the free flow of traffic, how much we're going to widen the street versus keeping it narrow. It is a residential neighborhood, but you've got an increased traffic flow because you got a multi-unit condominium building. So there's a lot of moving parts. I tried to summarize some of that in my email, and for every, pro on one side, there's a detriment on the other. But we're really looking for input on, do you want to maintain easy flow of traffic in both directions with people parked on both sides? That's going to dictate a wider street than the current, layout with many of our residential streets, where if there's cars parked on both sides, it's hard for especially two full size, like SUVs that are common these days, being able to pass each other with cars parked on both sides. So we had a lot of discussions about that. The village engineer has spent a lot of time sweating these details, and she knows far more about it than me. I'm like you. I'm just a driver. I appreciate when you don't have to pull over and wait for somebody coming toward you to pass, but that's an inconvenience. The issue that I think is the one that you should consider is, with pull in, back out, angled parking, you always run the risk of obstructing, backing out into the other lane. I can see Katie joined us. You back out into the other lane, that creates risks. If there's parking on the north side of the street, there's risk that people backing out of the angle parking will back into cars that are parked there. Those are not, in my opinion, serious enough risks to reject the angled parking or to reject parking on the north side in conjunction with the angled parking, out of hand, but they are considerations. So it's really just, we wanted to keep you in the loop. We wanted you to know that we've sort of narrowed it down to a few competing potential designs. And I think it might be helpful to hear from Alicia Herman, because again, she's got more of the technical expertise than I do. Like you, I'm a driver, so I think about it as a driver would, not as an engineer. So I'll let Alicia make a few comments.
Well, I didn't put together a presentation or anything. We're just here to kind of have an informal conversation about roads, which kind of gets me excited sometimes, right? I'm kidding. So we've kind of have a few different options that we've been looking at. And then actually Fire Chief just brought up something that I hadn't even considered. So it may be something that we may kind of go back to the drawing board even a little bit more. And what he just brought up actually had to do with a certain unobstructed access on that road for the fire apparatus to be able, the ladder, right? The ladder apparatus. And especially in the consideration of the fact that it is a multi-story building, 4 stories to be exact. So that may be something we're going to have to go back and kind of look at as well. So we may not actually have an actual official recommendation, especially after that. Not something I was not aware of, but so there's a few different options that we're kind of looking at. One would be just parallel parking along both sides of the road, very similar to what we have now, mostly throughout town, except for the fact that we were looking at it as trying to make sure we had access both eastbound and westbound that's free-flowing, as opposed to the situation that we have a lot of times where if people are parked on both sides of the road, it gets really narrow and you have to stop and kind of weave and wait for somebody to come through, and you can't, get through very quickly. I think everybody's familiar with that configuration that we have in a lot of places and on Samuel now. So we were looking at maybe a wider typical, where we would have two 11-foot travel lanes, one in both direction, and then the parking on both sides. That would be the parallel options. It was a little bit wider, but it would be more accommodating. The second one would be angled parking in front of the condo complex that you would pull directly into. It'd be 60-degree parking, very similar to what is over on Duryea. If anybody's familiar with where Duryea is, that's 60 degrees. Over on Kelly, that's 45-degree angle. So just kind of, if you've ever parked in both of those places, you can kind of maybe think, okay, I have an idea of which, how they're configured. So that one, unfortunately, when you integrate parking into a roadway system, it is a different scenario than a parking lot, because you do have, the motoring, traveling public going through. So the same kind of configurations and the dimensions that we typically will use in a parking lot don't work on the roads. And IDOT has standards, FHWA has standards, and they actually all recommend that you have the angled parking, and then you actually have an additional 16 feet to maneuver back. If anybody's ever parked in those angled spots, and you try to, and if somebody's parked really close to you on both sides, and you go to back out of those, you have to get all the way out beyond almost both of those cars that are parked adjacent to you before you can start to make that turning maneuver to get out. So you need quite a bit of distance. If you guys go over to Duryea, I don't know if you guys got the email that I kind of gave you a little bit of a comparison, if you will. Duryea, from the front of those spots to the curb line on the north, it's 41 feet. And if you ever try to make that movement out, it's kind of tough to do without hitting that curb. You can do it, especially if you're really watching. But I know Mike has actually had to replace the stop sign over there numerous times. He actually finally broke down and put it in a water main with concrete, so that if somebody hits it, I guess they're going to get a dent in their car and not take out the sign. So it does, it shows us that when people are backing out, they do have trouble and they're going to hit stuff behind us. So you need to have a satisfactory amount of width to be able to accommodate not only the parking per se, but that maneuver out and back to be able to safely get beyond those vehicles, as well as make that turning maneuver. The one option that we've got that we're presenting right now, and it's, none of this is set in stone by any means, we're just working on different ideas and trying to get some feedback, is a 60-degree parking. We are utilizing 20 feet long stall lengths, which meets the village ordinance. And it also gives us a little bit of buffer, because these vehicles will be parked right up onto the sidewalk along the condo complex. So we want to make sure that they're not hopefully encroaching over onto that sidewalk and impeding the pedestrian flow in front of that complex. And then, again, two 11-foot, a 24-foot parking, 24 feet for driving. Hold on. I think I gotta look back. You think yeah, 24 feet. If you guys have that schematic, it's 24 feet. And then 24 feet. Unfortunately, and then we have combination curb sidewalk on the north side. Unfortunately, that option, in order to get that pull-in angled parking, 60-degree, along Samuel, or along the condo complex, making sure we have enough width on Samuel to be able to get people out, hopefully safely. We just don't have enough room to provide parking on the north side of the road, which would eliminate parking for the barber shop on the north side. There would be 9 spaces in front of the condo complex, but there would be nothing on the north in that option based on the dimensions that we have right now. The dimensions that we have are 45.5 feet I believe. Compared to Duryea, Duryea is 41. So we're providing 4.5 feet more width to be able to get cars out in turn than what Duryea has with that particular option. Can we try to squeeze it down a little bit? Potentially. We could probably take the 24 feet down to 23. That buys us a foot. And we could maybe take the parking stalls from being 20 feet down to 19, which buys us another foot, which in that case, I could probably get parking in on the north side and it'd be 6 inches from the right-of-way line. So I'd be pretty tight. But that would only make it 43.5 feet from the front of the stalls to the parked cars along the barber shop. Chances are, or there could be a potential risk, that as if there's somebody pulling out of those parking places, backing up out of those places, that they could hit those other cars. And it could end up with a situation where Mike has to paint it yellow and nobody can park there. But again, I mean, it's just something to think about. That's what we're kind of here to talk about, kind of informally, is some of the things that we could do to try to accommodate this. And hopefully I'm doing a good job trying to explain it, because I didn't put together a official kind of.
Thank you, Alicia.
Any questions on that option?
Sure. So on the north side, you said there's current parking for a barber shop?
Well, right now, people park on both sides of the road.
Right.
And so people park right there in front of the barber shop to access his business.
So if we eliminate parking on the north side, is the barber shop going to be able to utilize the new parking on the, was it south side?
The south side parking is public. It's on public right-of-way. First come, first serve. So yes, your answer is yes. It's just, would it be available? But I mean, the parking in front of his place may not always be available for his clients either, depending on where people are parking. If they're trying to go to Leaves and Beans or something like that, I mean, there's probably chances people probably try to.
So even if we did nothing, it's still first come, first serve on the parking.
Yeah, it's first come, first serve over there anyway. I mean, in all technicality.
Does he have any rear parking, do you know?
I don't think so. Does anybody know? The barber shop have rear parking?
No.
I don't
No.
see it.
So
Out front, and a lot of elderly people,
on the north side, Mike?
just mainly in front of his shop, because of
North
the
side.
older people that,
Right.
that use that a lot.
So on the south side and coming across that road, is there going to be some kind of like raised crosswalk? If we had to have people walk across, if that was the new plan, are they just going to be jaywalking, if you will, or is there going to be like an actual, I don't know if that's the right term, but an actual crosswalk?
We would definitely have, curb ramps and I mean, I don't know if we could mark it for sure if we wanted. I don't know if it'd be raised, but be marked with curb ramps.
I mean,
for
if that was the objective, to have people park on the south side, would it make sense to have a raised crosswalk?
I don't know, raised crosswalks have pros and cons in regards to drainage and some other stuff. I don't know, I'd have to look at it and kind of think about it a little bit, but good thought.
And then-
Anyone else? Katie, I want to give you, whenever you're done, Alicia, are you finished?
No, I was going to talk about the last option.
Is that the one expanded?
Katie, would you like to?
So the last option is the reverse angle parking, which is where it's similar to downtown. If you guys are familiar with downtown, they have changed the parking configuration down there from where you pull in straight and back out. Instead, you back into the angled parking and then you leave going straight forward. They are significantly safer for multiple reasons. Actually, even AAA recommends that we all park, back in even when we go to the grocery store parking lot so that we leave going forward, or if you're going to the grocery store, pull through so that you're forward facing when you leave the aisle. But it's got a lot of benefits just because of the fact that you can see. It requires very little maneuverability space to get in them. It's very similar to a parallel parking situation, but actually easier. And when you go to leave, you really don't need much space to leave. All you need is a drive lane to get out, and you have great visibility. It's also great for anybody who's got stuff in their trunk because you're backed up right up to the sidewalk, as well as when you go to get out of your vehicle and get to the sidewalk, you open your door and you're automatically directed straight to the sidewalk, as opposed to having to kind of get out and maneuver or, potentially have conflict with the motorists in the drive lanes. That particular option, if you've got that one, Because of the change in configuration, it's 45-degree angled parking. We still have the 20-foot-long parking stalls. We're down to 2 11-foot lanes. We can actually get parking in along the north side. There would be 7 angled spots along the condo complex and around 4 on the north side for a total of 11. So the first option gives you 9 directly in front of the condo complex, none along the north side. This option would be 7 in front of the condo complex with 4 on the Barber side, or the north side, for a total of 11. So it actually gives you more, and it actually has a lot more benefits from a safety-related perspective. Now, all these options still have a bit of a discussion to probably be had with the fire chief over here as well, just because of the fact that he did bring it to our attention, the International Fire Code, where because of the multi-unit or multi-story complex, that he needs some more space for his fire truck apparatus. So that's going to be something we're going to have to talk about a little bit too. So probably none of these options, I mean, who knows? I may be going back to the drawing board entirely. I don't know. But these are just kind of giving you guys some ideas and some thoughts, just trying to get your guys' feedback. What do you like about these? What do you hate about these? You know, or what do you like? I mean, just all that good stuff.
So on option 3, you would go down Samuel, you would then reverse into a spot,
Yes. And then you would leave going straight
right?
to the east.
And how wide are those parking spots? I mean, not everyone's really good at backing up.
They're 8.5 feet.
8.5 feet,
And actually, that option, we could probably make them 9,
9?
maybe. I can't remember. Village ordinance is 8.5. That's a good question.
Well, backing up would be easier than parallel parking anyhow. I mean,
It's easier, but
my wife won't even bother with it. If it's a one spot close, he's got a parallel park, she's not even interested in it. So I like the third option. I think that's a good idea. Just pull up, back on into your spot, and then when you're leaving, you can look ahead. You don't have to crank your neck back. That's a really good idea, I think.
I like the third option too. I think the back-end parking's great.
It's funny because I've been in a lot of these meetings. We've had a lot of meetings, and I'm not a huge fan of back-end parallel parking or back-end angled parking, as you know. But I am for more parking spaces in front of businesses. And of course, I feel like it's a toss-up with safety, although the AAA comment is very important to me because obviously they're the ones doing the study, as you are. I feel like we're doing a disservice to the business across the street to not provide parking in front of their business. They've always had parking there, and I realize it's a free-for-all, first come, first serve, but we would be cheating that entrepreneur who came to multiple meetings resisting the fact that we both, as trustees, allowed the developer to have fewer parking spaces than necessary. So not only did he resist that, now we would be taking spaces away from him. So that's something to consider.
Would we be taking it away in option 3?
No, option 3, there would be parking along the north. Well,
So option
Yes,
3,
I
we
think.
wouldn't be taking away from him.
No, I
There'll
know,
be
I'm
more.
sorry. I agree. I said I'm
Yeah.
for the option with more spaces, which right now, without further
Oh,
discussion
okay.
from the fire department, so that would give us 11 total spaces.
Okay, I didn't, I'm sorry.
Trustee-
I didn't hear.
And it
Trustee
sounds
Gramp.
safer
Yeah.
because you say you open up the door and you're directed right to the sidewalk. You don't know this getting out, and some of us just don't have that much room to get through anyhow. You got to close the door. I mean, sometimes you would have to step out into traffic. And this sounds like a better idea, especially with having the trunk by the sidewalk. You're not loading it, you're not going out into traffic, and especially people with young children with them. They can load their vehicles without worrying about traffic. I think it's a good idea. 3 sounds like the best option.
Where would the fire department park their truck? This is going forward. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves.
Chief Walters, can you answer that question, please, and
I'm sorry, what was the
express any concerns?
Yeah, after the discussion last week, I was doing some research and I got into the International Fire Code. In the back of the appendix, it's apparatus placement, apparatus parking, and it was pretty clear that for buildings that are over 30 feet tall, we're talking new construction here, it's required to have 26 feet clear space with nothing in its way. And that's for either the deployment of an aerial apparatus or for a fire engine that's laying fire hose. So I think that's kind of a game changer here.
Well, neither of these options provide
Yeah,
that.
if we're putting parking in front of that building, that's.
Yeah.
Is it required that it's on all four sides of the building to have?
No, it would be in the front, is my understanding. I mean, we're gonna have to do some more, like I said, this just popped up, I'm looking at it, there's gonna have to be some more communication on this. If we could get it on the side for deployment of the ladder truck, I'd have to read a little bit differently, but when I was reading it, it specifically said 26 feet clear space. And another issue that, listening to your presentation, that causes me some concern with the cars parking towards the front. With the balconies that they've got on this, that obviously is going to be a point of refuge that we as firefighters are going to start getting people out of the building. If I've got cars lined up in front of there, I can't get my ground ladders up. Theoretically. I would have to look at the drawing and see the distance of the cars and stuff like that. But please understand my concern there. Because I also know that the utilities that are running in front of the building would preclude me from throwing my ladder very far off my ladder truck because it's in the way of where I throw my ladder would go to the upper floors. However, the alleys in the back would give us access not to the front but to the side, to the rear. We'd probably have to look at that as far as what condition they are, if they would handle the weight of the ladder truck. Can we get in? Can we get out?
16 feet out.
Well, 16-foot alley, but there could be 26 feet, like, at least if you add the distance.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, we only got 16 foot out.
Right. But, so I mean, I went down and looked at it, drove around it, and we do have those two alleys that intersect right there where the building is. That would give us two options where we could deploy it. Because my ground ladders, the ones that we pull off and move by hand, only go to the third floor.
You gotta be able to make that turn on those alleys, too.
Well, actually, we looked at that too. We go down Glen, turn down the alley, and it's a straight shot down there. I drove through that.
Just thinking.
Just to get out, however, getting on the other side of that, you've got a big dip that might take out the undercarriage of my ladder truck. I don't know how it works for your vehicles. I've never taken one down that type of alley before, a ladder truck or an engine, because it's very steep. For emergency purposes, if we had to, we could go down those alleys, and there'd have to be some work with the neighbors behind because they've got a parking mound, or maybe it's a water diversion, I don't know what it is, where we'd be able to get our truck and extend the outriggers so we could sweep two sides, the back and the side. The front would have to be, we'd obviously have to go in through the interior and try and bring them down that way. But yeah, when we looked at that, and then I looked at the International Fire Code, and it specifically says 26 feet, I do believe further conversation needs to go on about this. And I hate to throw a wrench into you like that, but new building, 4 stories, it's over 30 foot. Plus the dumpsters, I don't know if, I think that's just for construction right now, I do believe. Yeah. And that's something we would have to deal with for access for our apparatus. Those are construction? Okay.
There's permanent ones there that are VFLs.
May have to relocate. Okay. I know the only way we could bring the ladder truck, and that's what we're talking about right now. Because when we extend the outriggers, the fire truck itself is 8 foot wide. Each outset of outriggers are 4 foot, so that gives you 16 foot. That we have to have clear space, plus 2 on either 2 foot around to work. So that's going to give you 20 foot, but we'd have to be dead on it in the alleys. And the alley that's exactly in the rear of the building, it runs parallel to the building. We'd have to gain from the other cross street. I do believe we could make, it'd be a tight turn, but I believe we could get it down there. It's just finding out where we can set the stick, set the outriggers up. So it's a complication.
So to kind of make a couple of dimensions on that, the north-south alley, you're right, there's a huge hill.
Yes.
Going from the south side.
Yes.
I bottomed out my car on that.
Okay.
You will in your truck. So,
Oh, yeah.
But in coming from the north side on that, we have a concrete pad outside the garage that is not quite a full cart length. I think it's either 14.
Yeah, I know the area you're talking about.
There, and then you have the road, which would be ideally, alley. So you have the alley, which would ideally be at least 11 or 12. So you have around about.
The only issues I've got is the overhead wiring. And there's a telephone pole right there that's real close that would limit or prohibit us from actually swinging the ladder into position.
Are the utilities not being buried when this road is redone?
I mean, if they're being buried, that's a different ballgame.
I mean, if we're gonna, so can somebody answer me on that since we weren't here with the
That's
redevelopment
that's
agreement on
huge.
this?
That's what I thought.
I mean, because if we're redoing the road and
The
we're
goal
putting
is
in
to
all
get
the
them buried?
utilities and we're not burying them, that seems a little
Well, that,
counterproductive.
I thought there was some discussion on that. I mean, also, I wasn't here during the redevelopment agreement, but it was the responsibility, I think, from the meetings I've been in, of the developer. I don't know, maybe Mark can answer that question.
I can speak for that. Our initial intent, initial discussions were to put the utilities underground. So there is some.
that would solve a lot of problems for us. It would.
Yeah, so there's further discussion being had.
Okay.
On that scope of work, but that is our intent and our desire.
Okay.
To do that. And what we were looking at doing, and we met with Amber, of how far back they can come in those alleys to go back to the demarcated space to get that, but that would take those out of that alley as well as out of the front, because even if you can get up to the close front of the building, you have the same thing with those utilities in the front on the road side
Yep.
as well, because they go right there. And you also have the same thing in the alley, because there's utilities there too. So not only is the distance from the building, I think we can make that work, but the utilities are an issue that prohibit that even further. So I think we can get it to work, and hopefully.
Yeah, they're on
there's
the
a fire.
prospect side.
Those cars in front of the building that would be parked on the same road would move their car if it was on fire, but I understand that may not be an opportunity. I get that.
The parking lot, I drove through that, the parking lot's an ideal solution, but you're gonna have cars in there from time to time and we can't count on it.
Yeah.
That parking lot would be a prime location for us to set up our ladder truck to at least get up on the roof. I mean, that's something we need to do as well for ventilation, for safety, is to get up and ventilate the roof. Again, our ground ladders will not permit that. Interior stairwell may not allow us because of whatever conditions we find up there. So the other route is putting our ladder up on the roof, climbing up there and doing what we need to do that way. We possibly would have to open up a hole and go down into the floor below to do rescue. That's all part of it. But moving the utilities, from my perspective, is a game changer, makes it a lot better, because ideal situation for us would be to set the ladder truck up in the front of the building. I guess it depends on where the fire is at, and having those balconies. The balconies, I'm sure they would use as a safe haven if they could. And I know that's a concern of mine in the front with the way you guys wanted the cars to park there. Having the ability for us to throw the ladders from the ground up to bring people down if we need to, because if the cars are spaced, we may not be able to, because you've got an SUV, you've got a large vehicle there, that puts us way beyond the safety margin for the stretching of our ladders.
Yeah, and those balconies are tied in to a structural.
Yeah, I did see that, yeah.
And I think those what ifs, I think it's great that we have a couple options that we talk about, because we can't time when the fire will come.
Oh, true, and I hope it never happens. I mean, it's a sprinklered building, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is sprinkled,
Yeah.
so I mean, that's part of it too, but I think also, as we're talking too, similar to what we did, I think in Chester's building, is to have you guys come over and know where those staircases are before everything is done. As you're talking, I want to make sure we connect on that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you had that information. I finalized that information about 5 minutes before I came in here.
No, thank you, Chief, for bringing that up. So I was hoping we would identify an option tonight. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do that. That's okay, though. So I'm going to ask Dustin to organize another meeting with Fire, Public Works, Village Engineer, Council, and Developer. And if you all can bring us back a recommendation, not, if the board chooses to amend that, fine, but please bring us back a recommendation. I think that's what we're looking for. And you've heard the concerns tonight. So that makes sense, Dustin?
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
thank you all.
Mayor, just really
We'll take
quick.
care of that at the meeting, Alicia. What?
Huh?
What do you have?
Well, I guess I was just going to ask real quick. I guess I'm hearing a little bit about, or it sounds like everybody kind of likes the rear or the back end forward leaving, so that we'll kind of try to keep that on the table, right? Is kind of what I was getting from most people.
I don't want to lose the parking in front of the salon.
Okay, so
That would be, I don't care how they park in there, as long as we're not losing those parking spots.
Okay.
4 parking spots, I think is better.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what's most important here. So that as I continue to kind of look at the project, what do I keep as a priority as we're looking at it? So definitely parking in front of the barber shop and in front of the condo complex. If we can do it, we got to figure out the whole fire access as well. As we move east up Samuel, getting beyond the condo complex, do we want to continue to maintain free flow of traffic in both directions and have the parking on both sides? Or do we want to go ahead and go back to like the 30-foot wide road that we have currently where people can, they might park on both sides, but you're going to have a narrower travel way? I guess that's one more thing I need to get a little bit of feedback from.
How much of the yard would you take up doing that, though, making that wider?
It would be our easement, so.
It's ours.
It's all within our right of way. We're not taking anybody's property.
Yeah.
So it would just be that block from the alleyway to Prospect, is what you're asking?
Nope, east,
No, the other
towards
way. Oh, okay.
Columbus. Sorry, other way.
Sorry, I missed.
All right, nope.
I mean, my
Did you-
opinion is I would want, if I lived down that street, I wouldn't want to be able to park in front of my house if I could, if it's not taken.
Yeah.
And like where I live, I mean, we park on both sides and there's cars that can go either way at the same time. So I'm for that. I'm not sure what everybody else is.
I mean, we're doing, the goal is eventually to do the entire road, right?
Yeah,
I
from
mean, so
Prospect to Columbus, then,
we're doing everything. So I don't know, just because the condo building's there, I guess, why we would not maintain like a streamline effect. You know what I mean?
I agree.
We'll go back through, because that was the plan. The plan was everything would look uniform all the way down the whole road. I think that we should stick with that plan. That's what everybody voted on at the time between zoning and the village board, was that uniform look all the way down. That would be my vote.
So
I know, I appreciate it. That's the
I think
feedback I'm looking for.
A wider street would be safer. Where I'm at, only one vehicle at a time come down and you're parked on both sides. We got a lot of kids, be careful of them darting out from between the cars. So I would think the wider, if we have an opportunity to make one of our streets wider and safer, I say we might as well do it.
Yeah, the wider's going to be a little bit more costly. You also have the tendency sometimes when it is a bit wider with the parking designated on both sides that we think it's a little bit safer, but yet sometimes people start going a little bit faster as well. Because when cars are parked along both sides and the road's a little bit narrower, they kind of got to slow down a little bit more to get through. But it is definitely more appealing when you have a nice designated spot to park and then people can park.
And it makes it easier for emergency
I
vehicles
think
to
we
make
should
it
all
down there.
email you, Alicia, our comments as well.
That would be
So
great
this is
too.
something
I would
we can think
appreciate
about.
that very, very much.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good idea. We're going to move on, but so if you have any
Okay.
concerns or things you want in place, please email Dustin and let him know what your thoughts are.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
all very much.
Thanks, Aletha.
Trustee Carter, anything else under Public Works?
I don't believe so. Mike, you got anything?
I think Katie Kim wants to say something. You want to say something, Katie?
Yes, I'll be real short, because I don't want to reiterate anything, but I want to throw a couple options out, and I apologize, I wasn't here. Anyway, I'll just keep it brief. One of the things when you guys are considering the width, and I think a couple of the restrictions that Alicia's talking about when she says go wider, I definitely think a wider street, right now, you can park on both sides and you really can get only one car through that. Yes, we want to go wider to give both ways, but then there is that restriction of going so wide that then if we are truly getting garages in the back of these houses, which is our intent with the development, you're not going to have as many people park on the street. So if you don't have those people park on the street and you have this big wide area, now you have a drag strip. And I will tell you that where I live currently at 1430 Samuel, I live at the end of that strip. And I mean, it is a drag strip right there because coming down that hill, it's so wide and nobody parks on the street after like half the block because they have garages in the back. So 1426 doesn't, 1422, they all have parking spaces. So that's a thing, that's my only concern in making the road wider. In making the road to the wide standard where you have more of an IDOT standard and not so much a village standard, you take away a little bit of that character. And the topography is different from the first block to the second block. So if we go wider on that second block, on the south side, you're talking retaining walls, you're talking taking away substantial front areas, and you're talking about taking away some trees, which I know we've talked about the trees multiple times. If you look at where the property line is, if you drive down that street, one guy that you can look is at the St. Jude house where those brick pillars are at in that front entryway, that's at the property line. So if we widen it to the full extent, you're going to be taking that much of the front yard away. So that is just to kind of give you that frame of reference as you walk down the street. Ideally, we want to have cars parked on both sides, absolutely. So what we're asking also too is when Alicia's saying like, what's your points? Because we're handcuffed, if you will, by what you guys will want. And so looking at if we want parking on both sides, I don't want to take parking away from the barber shop. I want that to stay there. However, as Alicia's designing for engineering standards that she talks about, if we back up, you know, technically by standards, you're supposed to back up into that lane. I haven't seen anybody ever back up just into their lane. They're going to naturally go over, and it's a residential area. It's not like it's on Prospect. Also, that parking is one more block in than some of the other existence of this in the Heights. So it's not right at like the corner of Kelly and Prospect where it's right at that stoplight. It is past that alley and initial way there. So just wanted to kind of put that. And normally, I know, again, when we're looking at roads and stuff like that, you figure the 20-foot, like Alicia said, there's different standards for inside a parking lot, which would play, I think, a little bit more to more of a residential street. It's not a high-traveled street, but if we open it up too wide, my fear is that's going to be the beeline to get from Prospect all the way to Miller, and it's going to be more of a drag strip than it is now. We definitely want the sidewalks on both sides of the street, so hopefully the kids will play there. I know on the second half of the block they do. But normally the parking lot space is about 18 and a half feet deep, like with the city of Peoria code on that. And we were planning to do a quick claim deed with about 2 to 4 feet in front of the condo building in order to have that sidewalk come in a little bit more, to basically have that overhang. We have a 4-foot sidewalk now. We could make that a 5 to 6 foot deep sidewalk to have those cars hang over a little bit more and have a 3-foot clear walkway. We have the capability to do that. We will be definitely willing to do that as well. The forward, backwards, everybody has a personal preference on that. I won't even touch that one. But also want to make sure that more people, again, as we think about this road and we think about as those things get developed, if more people are starting to park in their garages, that will be less people on the street, which will also have more parking for the public. But if we make it too wide, then I worry we create that drag strip, but we want to make it where it is functional. We don't want to repeat the certain issues we have now. I'm not saying we do. I'm not saying I want it one directional. I'd like it two, but we could also make it two directional without having to make it the full width that would be required by the current code. And that's kind of that question that we're also asking for some of that, that consideration. So, thank you guys.
Thank you, Katie.
Can we get a drawing that shows both options on if the road is widened all the way or if it comes back through? I mean, I think this is something you guys do every day, so like I want to see like how much of the property is going to be cut off if we keep it wide down both blocks, or if we bring it narrow and then, you know what I mean, or leave it wide and then go back narrow.
You know what, the reverse angle parking option is not a bad one to look at, just because of the fact that the travel lanes are only 11 foot wide.
Okay.
We could maybe go down to 10, but that is probably the lowest you're gonna go. And then you can see where we have heading east towards Columbus. Mm-hmm. Those parking lanes are 8 foot wide, which is what you need to parallel park. So that is almost as narrow as you're gonna be able to go in order to be able to get parking on both sides.
Okay.
We might be able to shrink it up to 2 feet, where you take, instead of having 11 foot lanes, you go down to 10, but that one's pretty close.
But then the widest,
The widest?
So then if I go off the lane on this, like where the back of this parking lot is, that's where it would take off in the property line, right?
Guys, you know what, I can definitely meet with you and get an idea of what you're looking at specifically and try
Okay.
to provide you with.
I mean, because some of these run into somebody's house, so I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
we can make you anything you want.
okay, thank you.
Sarah, if we go to when we did the
Everything
original
else we will.
site plan for the condo, we kind of did a cross section of the street, like how the cars are now with the driveway. And I think currently, 2 cars in front of the other side of the street, it's 11.6 feet, 11.5 feet down the middle right now to them to drive.
I think maybe I just didn't word it right. I want to know if we keep the road wider, if we make the road wider so we have flow both ways, and we go all the way down from Prospect to Columbus, and you were saying the difference in the topography and how much it takes in the yard and the sidewalk, I want to know how much of the yard is lost for the people that live there if the road is at its widest point that we would make it.
And
I don't think anyone's going to lose any of their yard because they have a property line.
I get
You're
I
talking
mean, I
about
get
the
that, but like
grassy
there's an
space.
aesthetic too, right? Like
Yeah.
are we like all the way into the sidewalk? Like I just am curious about that. I understand it's our easement, like I just was curious.
well, and the first block is narrower than the second block.
Yes.
So if you'll have almost one answer for the first block and one answer for the second block, and that's where it kind of gets really complicated, where we could almost have the west block, so the block closest to Prospect, match the width of the second block. So that kind of, and then we hold that tight, and we kind of see whatever the drive lane is the drive lane. It's better than what we have now, but it's not a full-on interstate road.
Right, okay. Thank you.
All right, Cheryl, anything else under Public Works?
No, that's it for us, thanks.
All right. We're going to move on to economic development. The first is a discussion item, an ordinance amending the village code for the purpose of licensing and regulating of rickshaws operating within the village. Trustee Kazam, I'd ask for a motion to approve this.
Is this an action item? No.
We're going to send it to the full board.
Oh, we're going to send it to the full board, yes. I make a motion to approve.
Do you have a
send this
second?
to the full board.
Second.
Okay, go ahead, Beth.
I don't see Mr. McCormick in the audience tonight, but I do see
He's
the
back
pedal.
in the back of the corner.
Hi, sorry, I didn't see you back there. Would you like to come up and introduce this concept? We discussed it at the last board meeting, trustee meeting.
Sure.
Hello, good evening, and Michael McCormick's my name. Look outside, and that rickshaw is mine. I have one more. I might be pushing it home. The lights have been on all evening, but that's okay. So I proposed to the board a few weeks back. I think they were in favor of it. It's just a unique concept coming over to the Heights, taking passengers around, patrons, customers back and forth to their cars, to the local businesses. So it doesn't go very fast. It's just entertainment or just a pleasure ride.
And it's actually a service you're offering to customers who may.
Right, absolutely. Right.
Patrons of different businesses and that type of thing, right?
Sure, right.
And how frequently do you intend to run it?
Weather permitting, as often as possible. Seasonally, of course, if they're out walking around, eating, shopping. Evenings mostly, weekends, events.
Is there a fee associated with it?
There will be a fee, $1 to $2 a minute. I can carry 1 to 3 people. We can do tours. I'm not like an Uber. I just show up. You want to get in and go, you can get in and go. So.
Well, we talked about it at our last trustee meeting when we met Mr. McCormick. We really felt that I felt that this was a fantastic concept for Peoria Heights. We've had, while this is not exactly like the pedal bar, it's similar to an attraction that we have in our community. It does answer some of the questions for getting from point A to point B. Like if people are parking in a parking lot and then they want to park and go to a restaurant and there isn't parking directly in front of gyms or any of the other restaurants or businesses, so that's helpful that way. And I think it's really exciting. You might want to think about your cost, your fee.
Noted.
I mean, not to make it too expensive, but
Sure.
Understand. I feel like you're going to get a lot of business.
Don't run off, sir, but Council, will you tell us a little bit about the draft ordinance that we're looking at tonight?
Sure, Mayor. It's similar, if everybody remembers the pedal bus ordinance, this one would be similar, a little less in terms of the annual registration fee, and it's really just so that we know who the operators are. We have an opportunity to see and inspect, and I can tell by looking at it that this looks like a first-class, setup. So, but we want, the police department to have an opportunity to look at it and make sure it's got brake lights, turn signals, whatever safety equipment, so that it's not creating a safety hazard. And we kind of also want to know where they're operating at. So it's really more, regulation for us to keep tabs on it. It's not, there's nothing in it that's really onerous. So pretty reasonable restrictions. Mirrors and looks a lot like the pedal bus. It's just a little more streamlined because there's less concern. There's fewer people on it. There's no alcohol on it. There's a lot of, just less concern. So it's a little more streamlined in that ordinance, but a lot similar.
Thank you, Council. Questions?
Yeah, so is it motorized?
No.
Or do you pedal?
You pedal.
So I have a question. You had mentioned that to give tours, but does the pedal bus, does it have something in there that we can't have that would go against them? That would compete against them? Or?
No, we agreed for a period of a year to only license one pedal bus, but this is, to me, is a completely different concept.
Okay.
Tours meaning someone just wants a 15-minute ride, what would you recommend? So
Almost
Prospect.
like a carriage ride in other communities.
Right,
Like if you get
right.
in, you hire a carriage like in Chicago or any big city.
Take me down Grandview Drive.
Yeah.
It's a nice fall evening or something, and you're Prospect, Grandview, 15 minutes back up the other direction. So that's an option, possibility.
Other questions? Sir, are you ready to get right into business?
Yes.
So, trustees, normally we would send this to the village board meeting for action, but if you're agreeable, if we send this to the next just board meeting, is that okay with everyone for a final action, which would be the first Tuesday in October? Is that agreeable with everyone?
It's fine with me, yes.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
I'm not hearing any opposition, so it looks like things will go smoothly. If you do have any changes to the ordinance, please contact Dustin, and he can work with council to get those corrected. All right, Trustee Kazam, anything else under economic development?
That's everything, thank you.
All right. We go to administration with Trustee Gett. First is a discussion item, donation to local food pantries.
Thank you, Mayor. How much are they looking for us to donate? What is that?
$1,000 each.
I mean, I'm looking at this stuff and
So
I see.
can I get a motion then to send this to the full board for?
Move it to the full board for approval.
And a second?
Second.
I'd be very hard put to find a reason not to. I mean, I don't see any problem with it at all. Anybody else want to put anything else in on this, but.
No, we're also looking at some different grants. I know that Steph and I have been working on, there's some grants out there that possibly could bring some more money to the food pantries, but we didn't want to wait any longer. We wanted definitely to donate, and the recommendation is $1,000 to St. Thomas and also the Peoria Congregational Church.
So $1,000 each?
All right, so if there's no further.
Was it $1,000 each? I miss that. Okay.
Madam Clerk, when you're ready, call the roll on this to send to the full board for final action.
Trustee Carter?
Aye.
Trustee Mariscal?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Thank you. And the next Trustee Gett is, yes. Oh, we didn't do that? No. Okay. All right, so that passes. We did not take a vote on moving the rickshaw to the next departmental meeting for final action. So thank you, Madam Clerk. Whenever you're ready, call the roll on that.
Trustee Carter? This is to move the rickshaw ordinance to the next meeting.
Oh, okay, aye.
Trustee Mariscal?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Clerk, for being on the ball. Next, we'd be at Chuck's Auto Sales Quarterly Review. So Trustee Gaddard asked for a motion to approve this.
I make a motion to approve Chuck's quarterly review.
Second?
A second. Jeff, you want to comment on this?
Well, Chuck's got his quarterly. I mean, you know, everybody knows the history. Well, most people know the history. He's got it up to speed. Officer Brackney says she's checked out he's got less than 25 vehicles. He's meeting all the criteria. I mean, normally something like this, you do it yearly, but Chuck needs a little bit more guidance. So anyhow, I don't have anything else to add to it unless you do, Chief.
No, he's compliant, so.
Okay, this is fairly routine, so there's no discussion. Madam Clerk?
Trustee Carter?
Aye.
Trustee Mariscal?
Aye.
Trustee Exam?
Aye.
Trustee Gadd?
Aye.
Trustee
Aye.
Weisenberg? Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Thank you all. That passes. Trustee Gadd, anything else under administration?
I don't have anything.
Thank you. Next be fire. Trustee Weisenberg, a discussion item on survey questions and methods.
Thanks, Mayor. Last meeting, we had discussed having a more effective way of engaging Heights citizens on fire protection options. There was some concerns last meeting that a ballot didn't really give us a good opportunity to gauge everyone's opinions. One, in the smaller elections, fewer voters actually come out to those. I think last consolidated election, like 682 people voted out of, what, 6,000 people? So I guess this discussion is just about what questions would we want to put out on a survey, and is that the only method we want to use?
Maybe I misunderstood last time, but we're still doing a non-binding referendum question. But we want to get information out prior to that vote. And so are we posing questions to the community, or are we just giving them information?
Last time, I thought we had discussed a survey.
We did, and I tried to get those to you before this meeting, but I frankly just ran out of time. I do have some questions formulated that I'll circulate by email probably tomorrow. And it's not this isn't something where I have all the answers, so I want feedback. I want everybody to weigh in. Everybody has questions that they would want to ask if you were interviewing a constituent as to their thoughts and feelings about the fire department. So, you know, don't feel like this is a legal document that you're not a lawyer, so you can't weigh in on. It's not. Your input is every bit as valuable and more valuable than mine, so I'll circulate that tomorrow. The question was raised at the last meeting, what the deadline for the ballot question is. It's January 28th, so we've got a lot of time. But as as Trustee Weisenberg pointed out, you know, it's a consolidated election. You're not going to reach as many people as you can using all of the other means at your disposal, like public meetings, neighborhood meetings, all of the various, you know, social media that we have. So we want to get this questionnaire circulated through every vehicle that we have.
Okay, thank you, Counsel. Trustee Weisenberg, anything else you'd like to bring up under fire?
I don't, Mayor. I don't.
Chief Walters?
No, thank you, I'm good.
All right. Thank you. On finally is police with Trustee DeVore. We've had some comments and emails about open burning. So Trustee DeVore, you and I decided to put this on the agenda tonight just for a discussion. Would you lead this off, please?
Sure. I think everybody did receive the email of the citizen complaining. So in front of you, you have our current ordinance on burning of leaves, brush, trash, or garbage in the village. And I just kind of wanted to see where everybody else was at with this. Some of the options that were given inside of the email that we received, I just want to bring to everyone's attention, like if we did more yard waste pickup, eventually that would make our garbage bill go up a little bit more too. Once the garbage company catches on that there's more yard waste pickup, that's going to increase it. if we do the option where you push the leaves and the yard waste to the street and we have someone suck that up, that's gonna incur costs in the street department. So there are some things that we need to think of when we're trying to determine how we wanna handle this. Our ordinance, I think, is pretty clear on how our burning works, but if we wanted to make a compromise, there are options as making certain burning days, only burning one day a month or whatever. So I just kind of want to know where everybody else is at to determine how we want to move forward, or if we want to do nothing and leave it how it is.
I think we should, the only reason I'm saying this is because, with COVID right now, I'm working from home, so I'm really noticing this more. And it really is horrible when somebody is burning leaves and you want to have your windows open or your doors open. I end up having to close them all because of the smell, and it's just leaves. I mean, that's all, it's just that all the smoke's coming like right into my house. And I'm sure, and I don't have, the issues that some of these citizens have with COPD and emphysema and allergies and things like that. So, and because we offer the yard waste pickup every other week, I'm not even sure why we have to have burning of the leaves. I mean, why is that even necessary? Why not take into consideration all the people that it affects when you can put it in a paper bag and have it picked up every other week? One comes on Saturday, I think, and one comes on Friday.
I mean, just a little devil's advocate on that. Not everyone's yard is the same. If I bagged every leaf that was in my yard, I mean, I would have at least 20 bags 3 to 4 times in a season. That's a lot for the garbage. I think that they are gonna start noticing that if I bagged all mine. We do a combination of both, just because then you're also paying money in the bag. So we talk about how some of our citizens can't afford stuff like that. So is that gonna be a problem too, that are we gonna end up needing to provide bags because we don't provide burning, we don't allow them to burn? I think we need to think of it both ways.
Peoria doesn't allow them to burn. They don't provide bags. They don't
You have
provide
to get a
bags.
permit to have a burning barrel in order to do it for recreation. I personally don't want to change any of it. I burn, it's more efficient.
But then you're not thinking about other people that
I
have
have
health
problem- I have
problems.
problem
I mean,
I feel like there's a
there's
compromise.
people that
stuff,
can't
so-
breathe. I mean, the only reason I'm saying this is, my dad died of COPD. And when that season came around, it was horrible for him. So I can't imagine what these other people in this village go through that have these type of problems. I mean, when we offer, you can bag it up and we'll pick it up. And I understand that you might have 25 bags. I have a lot of trees too.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm willing to bag it up.
I mean, we do bag quite a bit of ours
and if
too, but there is burning too. So I didn't know if a compromise would be that we had burn days, right?
Well, if you do, think about it. Everybody's going to burn on that day, and this whole village is going to be like a big puff of smoke. Right? Because if you say, okay, you guys can burn every Saturday from 10 to noon or whatever, I'm telling you, you're not even going to be able to see the village because we're going to be under so much smoke.
Well, it is interesting because reading the email, listening to Trustee Mariscal and then reading the email, it does seem unneighborly, the scenario that they were writing about in their situation. This person is obviously ill, the neighbor is burning daily. So, I mean, first of all, that's just not being a very conscientious neighbor. I personally like the smell of leaves. We don't burn our yard waste. We have it taken away or other sources. But does this apply at all to recreational, like fire pits and bonfires and that type of thing?
This ordinance is just for yard waste.
Okay.
But then you get a rainy day in there too. Have you ever smelled wet smoking, burning leaves? It's even worse. And how do you stop somebody from burning if you have this in place? Like, it rained yesterday, so you can't burn tomorrow. You have to wait till your leaves are crispy. Well, who's going to be out there saying your leaves aren't crispy enough? You know what I'm saying? You're just blowing smoke.
It's a real tough topic. This community is split down the middle when it comes to this topic. For the years that I've been here, it's 50-50. And, I see pros and cons to both. I do understand if you do limit it to just one day, I'm not sure that that's a compromise. Could be maybe 2 or 3 days a week. I'm not sure what that looks like. But it's a no-win. I mean, 'cause if you do eliminate burning, you're going to have half the community back up here complaining that they can't burn. And so I think maybe a compromise, I'm not just saying one day, but maybe a few days, restrict the time. There's a lot of different options we can come up with, but this community is split on that. As far as the complaints that I see, it's 50-50. So.
Well, why do we pay for yard waste pickup then? That, I don't understand.
Because some people don't burn, and they do bag. They don't like the smell of burnt leaves, so they bag. And then I could sit here and talk about scenarios all day for what we see from the police side, and a lot of people are neighborly. They'll reach out to their neighbors and say, look, can you help me out? I've got the windows open. Is there any, and they work it out, really. Believe it or not, they do, and we don't ever come back. But then there's some which...
It's not like we live out in a wide open, I mean,
Right.
our community is tight. I mean, you're talking, a lot of these houses are side by side by side by side. I mean, it's not like you have huge yards for the burning. I just don't know how you're going to get around it. You're either going to let people burn or you're not. Now, Brandon, I think, was it earlier in the year, you had said something about, well, how about if they burn between April 1st and May 1st, nothing else again until between, was it October and November 1st? Something
Yeah.
like that, where you had those two time frames were the only times that you could burn. Any other time, you'd have to bag it up.
Right, and just for those who don't remember that, I was quoting actual ordinance from Chillicothe. That's how
Yeah.
Chillicothe does it. Getting back to the bagging, that takes a lot of physical work. I mean, it's a lot easier to blow leaves into a pile and light them on fire than it is to bag them and pick them up. I'm a little worried that if we say you have to bag them, there may be people who physically aren't able to bag it. Secondly, we have everything we need within our existing ordinance to combat the complaint of someone's blowing smoke into my house. You've never had the legal right to fill someone's house with smoke.
How do you stop it?
You call the
How do you
police.
stop it?
You call the police and they make them put it out. The ordinance says burning of landscape shall be permitted, but only when atmospheric conditions will readily dissipate the contaminants. Smoke is a contaminant. If the smoke is being blown into your neighbor's house, then they're not meeting the criteria to even burn and to begin with.
And you shouldn't be burning when it's windy anyhow. I mean, that's
So,
just
It doesn't
not
take,
being
it
safe.
really doesn't take a whole lot of wind to get that smoke coming to your house.
I understand, but that's what the ordinance says. If it's blowing smoke into your neighbor's house, you have no legal right or moral right, in my opinion, to be burning, because you have no right to fill someone else's house with smoke. If it really
Well,
is that
then you might as
bad.
well just get rid of it, because it's going to happen. And everybody's going to be calling him, saying, hey, come and have them put that out, because that smoke's coming right in my
Well,
window.
I mean, I didn't write this ordinance. I mean, it was, what, 90-something?
I know, this is like
But,
from 19...
So they tackled the issue of the burden of the police department then, but, I mean, it says right here, if the atmosphere conditions aren't right, you shouldn't be burning leaves.
Like I just mentioned, when we do go out and we have a nice discussion with them, usually it works itself out. If we explain that to them, that's what I was referring to, we don't have to come back. Most of the time, this thing, it works out. They either put it out or, and wait for another day, or move it to the other,
Can you burn in your neighborhood?
Yes,
You can.
yes.
And
Anyway.
And just getting back to, in the email, I think
like
he made the comment that, or he or she, I don't know, can't remember who it was, that our houses are close together. Well, as a river rat, someone who grew up below the hill, it feels like an entirely different country. It is rural down there. Living along the river, I could burn all day and no one would even know. So I worry that
I just think you need to be more restrictive on this, because I really don't care about having my windows open at 5 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock at night. But if you're going to let people burn between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. every single day, you might as well just tell them they can burn any time. I mean, what's that part right there, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. You might as well just say you can burn every single day of the week.
6 p.m. is to eliminate them doing it at night, and, there's more chance of something getting away from somebody.
The 6
That makes
a.m.
sense.
The 6 a.m. also allows people who work third shift to be able to do their yard work when they get off work before they have to, before they sleep.
I don't know. I am taking into consideration all those people with health problems, and I know there's a lot of healthy people too, but if you ever saw somebody that had one of those diseases or suffered from it, you would say no to this. And I mean, it's not going to hurt anybody if they can't burn their leaves. You know what I mean? Now I understand what you're saying about, like, I had the street sweeper come up and down my street yesterday, probably 5 or 6 times. If you want to sweep them out into the street and you guys want to go with something like that, if he's going to street sweep, why can't he just sweep?
We have no area to dump that at. We have no dump site currently, so where are we going to put it
That's
at?
not even an option?
Maybe soon, but not right now. We have no dump site.
Collect them and burn them yourself, right?
No.
You would have so many leaves.
No, Trustee Marshall, I don't think anyone should be burning leaves and filling someone's house with smoke. If my neighbor was, well, one of my neighbors is in Peoria, so I don't know how that would work, but if I had a neighbor that was burning leaves and all the smoke was coming into my house, I'd call the police department, because the ordinance says that they can't do that. If it's going straight up and out, then I don't care. But if it's blowing towards my house and filling my house with smoke, then they're in violation of the village ordinance, and I would call the police, is my take on it.
I agree with you.
I don't want anyone's house full of smoke.
Right.
And I don't think anyone, and legally, they can't do it. As according to the ordinance, it says, section 3, subparagraph C, says you can't do it if you're blowing smoke into someone's house. So
I think you should take a survey on this just as much as you should anything else. I bet you that you'll find more people don't want it.
Well, I brought this to your attention tonight simply because we do get some calls on this. If you do have a desire to fine-tune this or amend the policy that we have in place, work with Trustee DeVore and Chief Sutton. Sarah, I'll let you decide if you want to bring this forward again, but I think we've discussed it enough tonight. We'll bring it back up if necessary.
Okay.
Sarah, anything else under police?
I do, actually. We received a report today from the Illinois State Police on an audit that our police department had, so I just want to read this last paragraph for you. It says, congratulations on your agency's full compliance with LEED's NCIC rules, regulations, and policies. Please extend our sincere appreciation to your staff for their cooperative assistance during the audit, and congratulations for their outstanding efforts with full compliance in all areas. So this was great for our department to receive, so great job, Chief.
Thank you. You or Chief Sutton have anything else?
No, nothing there.
Okay. We're through all the business, I think, so we would be at a presentation on the tax cycle by Peoria County Administrator Scott Sorrell, a longtime friend, and I had the privilege of working with Scott over 20 years. Scott is the Peoria County Administrator, as I said. He oversees about 650 employees and a budget of $120 million. And a couple of his highlights in his career was overseeing the building of the Peoria Riverfront Museum. So, Scott, welcome, and we're excited to hear about see your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees of the village. Thanks for having me tonight. Mayor asked me to just talk for a couple of minutes about the tax cycle process, so I've got a short slide deck to do that. There's 2 components to the tax cycle process. The first is the property tax assessment and tax billing process. It's an 8-step process that snakes its way across the screen here. I'll just kind of quickly walk through each one of the steps. It starts each year with the township assessor, and it's the township assessor's job to estimate the value for all non-exempt properties within the township. An assessed value, for everyone's knowledge, if you're not aware, is roughly 1/3 of the estimated market value. Once the township assessor has completed that process, he or she transmits that to the county assessment office and the supervisor of assessments. The supervisor of assessments takes that information from all of our townships in Peoria County and then applies, as necessary, a uniform percent or decrease to ensure that all the properties are consistent from an assessment level. That way, a $100,000 house in Peoria Heights is assessed the same as a $100,000 house in Brimfield, as an example. All right, just as an anecdote, our township assessors in this county do a very good job at that to begin with, so there's very little work that our supervisor of assessments has to do in terms of that task, but that is one of the statutory tasks of the supervisor of assessments. The second component of what the supervisor does is he mails to all of us our assessment notice. So if you own property, you receive an assessment notice in terms of what the township has assessed your property at and what the supervisor has then, if necessary, made any of those uniform increases or decreases for the consistency. If you don't like what that assessment is for your property, you have the right to appeal that. And that's done through the Board of Review, which is a 3-person partisan body that is appointed by the county board. It's required to have, each member is required to have a certain state certification as it relates to real estate knowledge. The majority is based on the political party that received the highest vote tally in the most recent general election. So this November, the state's attorney, the circuit clerk, and the coroner, for example, are on the ballot. Which one of those offices is the winner? And all 3 incumbents happen to be Democrats. So that would mean that starting in January, starting in May of next year, state law requires that the Board of Review composition be 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. And then that will flip most likely in the next election cycle when the sheriff is up for election. So they hear those complaints from taxpayers, but also sometimes from governments. An example of when a government might file a complaint on assessment here locally that we've seen in the last couple years is normally a school district. We've seen both IVC file complaints as it relates to assessed property of Caterpillar-owned property in the Mossville area after buildings were closed and assessments were lowered. Dunlap School District has done the same for the shops at Grand Prairie when we've seen vacant properties and the shops have been downgraded in their assessment. Sometimes the school districts win, sometimes they lose. The same thing with individual private property owners. Once that Board of Review process is complete, the final assessment of all the properties combined in the entire county gets transmitted to the county clerk. The county clerk then takes what's called an abstract of all of those assessments for all of our properties and sends it to the State Department of Revenue for an equalization factor. And ideally you want to have a 1.0 equalization factor. And what that means is that you've done the correct job of assessing the properties in your county. We have a long history of receiving just exactly that. If you receive something less than a 1.0 in your equalization factor, that means that you have undervalued the properties in the eyes of the State Department of Revenue. If it's greater than 1.0, you've done the exact opposite in terms of valuing those properties. So the ideal is to get a 1.0, and we have a long history of receiving that. So once the Department of Revenue gives that back to the county clerk applies that equalization factor to every single taxable property countywide. And then they apply each levy request from all of the taxing bodies, and we have about 150 or so countywide, so that the individual tax rate can be calculated. That process is called tax extension, and it is that portion then that the county clerk then rolls it over and gives it to the county treasurer for the purpose then of printing and mailing each and every tax bill to all of our citizens and all of our property owners. Whether you pay your tax bill through an escrow with your bank, or whether you pay it in person with the township collector, or you pay it in person with a local bank, or you go to the county treasurer's office and pay the tax bill, all those payments come back to the county treasurer. And then they distribute those revenues to each and every taxing body based on their final tax rate and the levy that they had previously supplied to the county clerk. At the end of the season, once all of the final distributions have made from the payments that the county treasurer receives. The treasurer calls together a list of those properties that are delinquent, which means the property owner did not pay all or a portion of the property taxes that were owed in that tax year. What happens then is the treasurer organizes a sale of those delinquent taxes, not the properties themselves, but the delinquent taxes, the value of the property tax that is still outstanding. Any number of tax buyers across the community are eligible to pre-register for the tax sale and then purchase those taxes. And then you as the property owner, if you're a delinquent property owner, you have to work with whoever bought those taxes to pay the county clerk back through the redemption process. So you're redeeming those taxes, those back taxes that are owed. That usually comes with some sort of an interest rate or an administrative fee that the tax buyer applies to that, and that's how they make their money. If a property goes through the tax sale 3 consecutive years, then the legal title of the property goes to the county trustee. And the county trustee is not a county department. It's not a county official. It's actually, there's one office, one consultant that does this for, I think, 97 or 98 of the counties in Illinois. And what the county trustee does is he holds the property in trust for all of the taxing bodies that receive property tax revenue from that property. And that property gets cycled back into the tax sale each year for potential sale. I was looking last week, and there are very few, if any, trustee parcels here in the village. But if you look at, say, the city of Peoria, especially in the south end, between properties that the city of Peoria owns outright or that the county trustee is holding in trust for all the taxing bodies, there's a little over 1,000 properties in the south end of Peoria that meet that criteria. So that is the property tax assessment and tax billing process. The other process that we have in the tax cycle is the taxing district, in your case the village's budget and tax cycle levy process. So each year, you as a village board prepare and publish notice of your proposed budget, including your proposed tax levy. At some point in your process, then you adopt that levy ordinance and your appropriation or budget ordinance. The levy ordinance should describe how you're going to use the property taxes that we generated from your levy. At the county level, we use our property taxes to do things such as conduct elections, because the election commission doesn't generate any revenue. They have to rely on property taxes or some other broad revenue to fund their operations. We pay for a portion of the prosecutors in the state's attorney's office, a portion of the public defender services, and some of the sheriff's operations as well in our general fund levy. We have multiple levies, including pension levy, including levies for roads and bridges in our highway department, and a whole host of other things. So those are just some examples of how the county uses their levy. Each taxing body is going to be different based on the purpose of that taxing district. In December, your clerk transmits the levy ordinance as adopted by all of you to the county clerk, and that's what the county clerk uses then to create that tax rate in the previous process. And then throughout the course of the year, once all of us as individual citizens have paid those property taxes to the county treasurer collects those and then distributes back out to each of you from a taxing district standpoint, not you individuals, but you, the village, your share of the tax bill for those properties here in the village. And then you obviously deposit those revenues and then use them for the purposes stated in your levy ordinance. Just looking a little bit at some data that I pulled. This is readily available on the county's website, although I added the graphics for the village. So all the data that we're going to show is for the 2019 assessment year for taxes that were payable this year. You have a total of 2,961 pieces of property in the village, but only 2,848 of those actually pay property taxes. There's 113, one state railroad property and 112 exempt properties that are exempt from paying property taxes. An example of an exempt piece of property would be a church. It would be the property that Village Hall sits on, so on and so forth. And so you can see there's a pretty large percentage of your taxable parcels that are residential in nature. If we look at it from an equalized assessed valuation standpoint, so the equalized assessed valuation, that's after the equalization factor that's been applied by the State Department of Revenue from the taxation process early on. If you look at your total EAV versus your rate setting EAV, you have a total EAV of a little over $101 million of EAV, which means that the estimated market value is 3 times that. But where we apply the tax rate that comes from your levy to, it's only $94.68 million. Now that is a combination of, in terms of the difference between total EAV and rate setting EAV, that goes back whether there's any enterprise zone properties that have been abated, if there's any TIF properties that have any property tax abated, anywhere there's a development where the village board has previously by vote chosen to abate the taxes for that individual property or properties, that's where you get the difference. And so you can see from a total EAV perspective, about 68% of your property value is in residential properties. But when we look at setting and applying your tax rate to the tax bill, it's a little over 72% of the property values in the village are residential. And roughly a quarter or so are commercial properties. If you're going to look at some averages, so on average, the rate setting equalized assessed value, on average, that the residential property is valued at $26,706, so triple that to get an estimated market value. If you average out your total levy by the number of residential parcels and the value of those parcels, the average residential piece of property in the village pays $196.23 in property taxes. Commercial and industrial pay, obviously, a little bit more. The overall average across all of your properties in relationship to the levy that was applied, the average taxpayer pays $176.53. That's a direct result of there just being more residential property than any other type of property on the tax rolls. This is a report that is done by the county clerk. It's available on our website. It's called, obviously at the top, the Tax Computation Report. This is yours. And what it shows, again, is that total EAV and rate setting EAV here in the upper corner that I referenced in one of my other charts. And then it has all of your funds where you may or may not be applying a levy. In the current year for village residents that paid property taxes, they paid property taxes on 2 things. One is your corporate fund, which you had a levy request of $124,533. We extended that based on the final equalized assessed value of all the properties in the village of $124,535.35. So you got $2.35 more than what you originally requested. And the difference there is a function of what we estimated the equalized assessed value to be when you submitted your levy in December and what the final equalized assessed value ended up being after the board review process and after everything else in taxes were actually extended. The other component of your levy is the police pension levy. You asked for $378,213. We actually levied $378,217.06. So an extra $4.06 in terms of that, which means, what that means in terms of both of those levies is the value of the property between what we estimated it to be when you submitted your levy in December and what it final was, is it ended up being a little bit higher. So property values went up a little bit once we completed all those steps in the tax cycle process. Here's just a sample tax bill. I pulled this, obviously blocking out key information so as not to disclose which tax bill this is. But what we're putting out here is you've got two components on the tax bill. This is for a property here in the village. $194.45 goes for those two levies that I just walked through, and $36.84 goes to TIF District number 3. So that means the property that I chose at random happens to be in TIF District number 3. If I had picked a different piece of property that's not in the TIF district, that line would not apply, or it would be a 0. But you can see this property paid a total of $3,586.86 in property taxes. And at only a little over $200, $220 of total property tax, your share of the total tax bill is actually pretty small. At the end of the day, the biggest chunk of any property tax bill in Illinois, regardless if it's here in Peoria County or in any other county, is going to be the local school district. That it always is the lion's share. In this case, Unit 325 collected $2,112.15 out of this total tax bill. So we offer on our website some very basic information, so if anybody has challenges or doesn't understand how the tax bill works, we walk through a sample tax bill like this on the county treasurer's website, and that information is free and available for anyone to take a look at. So, Mayor, thank you for the opportunity. That's all I have tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions the trustees and you may have, and happy to be here tonight.
Go ahead if anyone has questions.
Sure. First question is, can you email that PowerPoint to us?
I already have. Sarah has it.
Okay.
So it came just a little bit earlier today. I finished it up early today.
And when the levy increases, so say we increase the tax levy $25,000, is that considered a property tax increase for the village?
For your share of it, yes.
Okay. Okay.
A good example, we'll just go back to the tax. So Peoria County, which is the first line, we, in the last decade, we've raised our levy only once, and that was after a voter-approved non-binding referendum. When the mayor was on the county board, our tax rate wasn't 0.8241, it was 8050, and was for a very long time. We raised it to the 0.8241 only after the voters in a non-binding referendum gave us permission to do so, or gave us the consensus to do so, and for two specific purposes. One was to increase the funding and staffing available for our Veterans Assistance Commission, and the second was for our Care and Treatment Board for persons with developmental disabilities. So two specific services that the county is obligated to deliver. The county board could have raised those levies and those without voter approval, but the board chose to ask the voters first before doing that.
Sure. And truth in taxation. So if a government body raises the levy only 4.9%, and they don't have to send letters out to the citizens letting them know that their taxes increased, even though their taxes have increased. Is that
right. So by state law, a truth in taxation hearing is required when the levy request increases by 5% or more from the previous levy or the previous year's levy. How you notice that up may differ from county law to municipal law for villages. We don't have to send notice to every single property, and if the county does that, and we have to have our own truth and taxation hearing for our share of the levy, we have to put a legal notice in the paper.
Okay.
So that may be a nuanced difference between municipal government and county government.
It might be my misunderstanding of the law as well, but I know that you had to notify the citizens somehow.
Right. So for county governments, it's a public notice in the paper.
Okay. And I realize this goes above and beyond you and I, but what if a majority of your citizens don't read the paper? Then they would never know.
That's a function of state law not keeping pace with the times. And I think, any good government, when in the past, when Peoria County government has had to do that, and we've only had to do it once or twice in the 18 years I've been in the county administrator's office. We've used social media and other platforms to get the word out. But obviously, that doesn't touch every single resident. Peoria County has 185,000 residents and roughly 88,000 pieces of property.
From your experience, do most taxing entities raise it just below that tax and truth and taxation limit?
I'll be honest, I don't track the comings and goings of the individual tax levies of all 155 units of government in the county. I really only look at Peoria County governments, and we have as I said, a long history of keeping the Peoria County Board focuses more on the tax rate than the levy. And so what that means is, we try to keep that rate flat. So when property values increase, that means that our levy goes up and we actually generate more property tax revenue, and that means all Peoria County taxpayers are paying a little bit more in property taxes to Peoria County government. When the property values decline, which is what they've been doing for the last several years, that means that we generate less property tax revenue because our levy is less, even though the rate is the same, because we have to apply that rate across a smaller tax base, which means everybody pays, it's a little inverse logic, but everybody ends up paying less because property values go down. And so where we've focused on is the county board's focused on keeping the tax rate flat, and then whether we generate more or less property tax revenue is a function of whether or not property values go up or go down. And for, like I said, the last several years, our property values county-wide have been decreasing.
Right. Yeah, and people make comments all the time that, people pay a lot of taxes in the Heights. I looked up the property tax of my neighbor who's in Peoria, and they pay like 3 times the amount to the city of Peoria than I pay to the village of Peoria Heights. So, yeah.
Anyone else? Scott, if I may, if you would just elaborate a little more, I want to go back to your point on focusing on the tax rate and not so much the levy. So would you say that the county board's focus has been in growing the economy to keep that rate constant? Is that really the
Sure, Mayor. That's one of the strategic priorities of the county board is to increase the tax base. That way we spread that same tax rate across more taxpayers. And ideally for Peoria County government, it's increasing the diversity of the tax base. Much like the village, but not quite to the degree of the village, where you have such a large percentage of your tax base in residential properties. We have a large percentage of the countywide tax base in residential properties as well. As you can grow the economy with commercial and industrial development, you diversify your tax base, you shift some of that obligation to your commercial and industrial taxpayers, and thereby decreasing that burden on your residential taxpayers. Everybody's going to pay their fair and equitable share based on the value of their property, but as a homeowner, you may want to try and increase commercial and industrial development so that your homeowners don't have to pay as much as what they're paying right now for the village's share of the tax bill.
So that's a good point, and I think sometimes the citizens ask us good questions about why we focus so much on economic development, but summarizing what you said, by having economic development and new construction, that actually keeps everyone else's tax bill lower. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair representation when you say everyone's tax bill lower, you're talking about residential property taxpayers. Obviously, new construction for commercial and industrial development, you're going to see an improvement on the property, so the value of the property is going to go up, which means the value of the taxes paid is going to go up as well. But the more you're able to be successful with economic development, the more you're able to diversify that tax burden across the multiple types of properties, and that should have the impact of lowering the residential share of that tax burden in the long term.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor and board members.
We'd be at miscellaneous business. Any miscellaneous business? We do have what I hope will be a short executive session. It's personnel matters, 5 ILCS 120/2C2. So I'd ask for a motion to go into executive session.
I make a motion for executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I do. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Carter?
Aye.
Trustee Mariscal?
Aye.
Trustee Kazan?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
All right, we're going into executive session. We're going to come back and adjourn only. We will not conduct any more business.
Do I need to take over, Mike? What?
Are you the pro tem or?
Where's he at? Oh.
Does that really hold it up though, probably?
No, because it's not like they're right at the table to be analyzed. We have time.
Okay.
We just don't want to.
I actually went to Kroger the other day and I asked the checkout woman if she knew about this, and the bagger said, oh, I was here that morning. And I said, oh, well, did you see the person? He said, oh, yes. And I had questions, but I was fearful to ask. I didn't want to go too deep.
Okay, we're back in regular session. We have no other business to conduct. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I do. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, we're adjourned.
You get your sign? Chris mentioned it, but I didn't see it when I was home.